If not, I'll use my preacher voice that Bobby used, and try to use mine. Although I don't do Pentecostal, I do Baptist-costal, so I'm a little bit everywhere. Not as animated, but you good? Am I good here?
Yeah.
It's not as loud as when I
That's for the video.
Oh man, so I'm thinking I should be projected a lot louder. Not only do I own my business and I kind of referee a little bit. Some people think I should have given it up a long time ago, and then do the coordinator's position. But within the last 6 months or so, our church pastors kind of stepped aside, and now there's 4 campus pastors, and I do some Sunday morning. I don't preach. I deliver the message, but so I'm used to the speakers being like, and the monitors being like really loud. So if I'm yelling, the guy with the headset back there just kind of pull it away from your ear. I don't mean to be loud. When Jen asked me to talk, she called me a week or so ago. She said, can you come and talk? We talked about this last year. Actually, she gave me more notice this year than she did last year. Last year, she called me on Thursday as she was coming down. She said, oh, by the way, since you got this conference, would you like to come and talk and see some officials or talk to them? And I said, when is it? And she said, oh, well, we're going down now. Like, okay, Jen. So this year she did give me at least another 7 days notice, so I appreciate that. So we're talking. I said, yeah, I'd love to come down. I got some things to do Friday night, but when? And she said, oh, sometime Friday. We'll work it in. And I said, okay. Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to talk to some officials. And so we talked, we chatted a little bit. And then finally she said, I said, well, what do you need me to talk on? She said, communication. I went, oh, okay. And then she said, and you got about a 45-minute window. I went, oh, crap, really, 45 minutes? I looked at my wife, I said, Jen wants me to come down to Raleigh next week and talk for 45 minutes on communication. She went, oh, 45 minutes, that's a long time. I said, yeah. So then we hung up, and I'm like, oh, I'll get up at 5:30. I'll drive down to Raleigh. I'll turn around and drive back because I got to go to Charleston, West Virginia tonight. And I'm thinking, that's a long day. Communication, 45 minutes. 45 minutes isn't long enough. I'm thinking, I don't have any time. I got too much time to talk, and then 45 minutes to talk about life. I mean, everything we do, everything that you're doing right now, everything that Deb and I did, everything is communication. We could go ahead and take till the first game starts at 5 o'clock tonight and talk about communication. Bobby's already talked about it. Everything that you guys are doing right now is communicating to me and communicating to clinicians and staff and future bosses, the guys that are highly motivated and he's sitting back. Everything you do is communication. You're communicating whether you're willing to listen or whether you're tuned out and thinking, okay, at 4 o'clock I'm going to get on the floor because I need to be the best one by Sunday. So she said, you got 45 minutes to talk about communication. My first thought was, that's way too long. I'm really hoping Bobby takes his time, so I got a lot less time. And I told Jen, I said, I can talk for 10 minutes and I'll ask questions for 35 and we'll be good. She said, as long as you show up, you don't screw up. Like, great. So she saw me at breakfast. She said, you made it. And I said, well, I haven't screwed up. So, and I can tell a few stories because one of my bosses isn't here, so I can share a couple stories. How not to, and Jen and I have joked a few times over the past years on how not to communicate to coaches. And I can share this story because Jen and I were in this game, and this team, and I will not name names in certain situations, and this one is to protect me, not the coach. But this team's at home. They're in second place in the conference. They're playing a team that's probably 8th or 9th in the conference at home, losing by 20, second half. And they are getting it handed to them. And the coach is beside herself. We have a transition into the backcourt. The team that's up 20, they only have 2 short guards, and they're outplaying the whole other team. Shoots a 1-on-2. The 2 players take her into the basket support. She shoots a layup, and I don't know whether she makes it or not, but she gets taken into the support. So I got a foul. So I report the foul, and I come out, and I'm standing next to this coach, and I hear, and I've got it on DVD, and it is quiet. And I hear, Brad, it's called a blocked shot. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, it's called a block shot, Brad. And I turn and I look and she's standing and she's like this. Well, just politely, give her a technical. So we shoot our shots. We go back a couple times down the floor. So I come down. I'm at the coach's box. Well, she is just still livid. She comes up to the edge of the coach's box. And she says, Brad, I just want you to know something. And it's like this. I want you to know something. That's the first technical I've ever gotten. Ever. And I stopped for a second and I said, ever? She's the first technical in my career. Of course, we've heard that every time we call one. And I stopped for a second and I looked at it and I said, first one ever? She said, ever! And out of body experience, I said, well, should I be sorry or should I be honored? And that's the look I got. And she turned around and walked and I went, oh crap, there went my career. And I went, oh, this is going to get back to the coordinator. You can't take it back. It's like they say the toothpaste analogy. Once you squirt it out of the tube, you can't put it back in, right? Oh, man. So I finished the game and I told Jen, I said, I think I did something I shouldn't have done. And I told her what happened. She said, oh, that's not good. So, things not to say to a coach. Now, I'll tell you one more story, and then I'll get into a little bit of, because I appreciate the fact that you're going to take notes, and you're like, this guy's really off his rocker, but I'm going to take a few notes to make it look good. We were telling Ben last night, I got some football stories. I don't do football anymore. I did Division II college football for 15 or 16 years and had quite a few looks at trying to get to Division I, but for whatever reason didn't work out, and that was fine. I just all for a plan, but I worked the sideline at one time and was telling Ben this story. I said, have I ever told you this story? And he said, no. So the sideline's not as deep as this. It's a college game. Sideline's not as deep as this. And that includes the bench and all the players. So we're crowded. So the home team runs an off tackle and the team behind me is the visitors. And I hear this screaming, throw the blanking flag. I mean, this guy is just screaming at me. They want to hold. Throw the blanket flag. And I turn around, and he's about 5 or 6 yards out on the field, and he's screaming at me. So I threw the flag. And I run out in the field. My crew chief looks at me, and he says, what have you got? And I said, I've got 15 on the sideline for unsportsmanlike. The guy said, what did he say? I said, he said, throw the blanking flag. So we mark it off, and I turn around, and now the head coach is out on the field, and he is just, his head is beside him. He's screaming at me, Brad, you can't do that. You can't do that. I said, Coach, he's on the field screaming at me. He said, he's not one of ours. I said, what do you mean he's not one of yours? He's with the chain crew. I said, Coach, he's got one of your jackets on. He said, well, we gave it to him because it was raining. I said, well, you better take it back. So we finished the game. Of course, now he's really just coming unglued. He's got the team jacket on. I said, you take it back. So we go out. We finish. We go out and come out of the locker rooms, and the team's there. The charter buses are all lined up, and the players are getting their pizzas and getting their food, and they're loading up the bags and everything. And I see this guy that I just flagged 15 yards for, and he's standing there with his charter bus uniform on and his charter bus driver hat. Okay, he's the charter bus driver. First that I know of that's charter bus driver's ever been flagged 15 yards. So the head women's basketball coach is standing down the end of the field like this, and he's just shaking his head. I see them the first game of the season. He walks out and shakes my hand. He says, no technicals on the bus driver. I said, as long as you didn't bring him, we're good. I got a ton of stories, but communication. Like I said at the beginning, every aspect of life, and if you want to turn the screen off, if it goes off by itself, I don't have anything on it. I'm not as technically advanced as Bobby. I don't have anything on the screen. Everything's going to be notes. But everything we do in life is communication. And Jen said communication and partnering. So I kind of piggybacked, or I kind of did 3 segments of this. Communication with our partners, communication with players, and communication with coaches. And I'll save what I'll call the best one for last, which would be communication with coaches. But, you know, like I said, I thought it was ironic that she said you get 45 minutes to talk about something that's, you know, basically forever. But I think as you know, some of you all will have a career in officiating, and I say it's a career because, like Bobby said, it's a job. You will get paid a certain amount of dollars for a game, and if you break it down per hour, it's going to be, some people get paid $300 or $400 an hour. Some people get paid $15 or $20 an hour if you work in some high school. There's not many jobs out there, fresh out of college, that you get $15, $20, $30, $40, $50 an hour. So don't think, well, it's just something to make some money on the side. It is a job. Treat it like one. Be professional and treat it like one. Which means you don't go into a game once you get the assignment, and we could talk for an hour on how to talk to a coordinator or assigners and getting assignments and doing all the paperwork and all the homework. He said, don't be a headache. Don't take care of everything up front. But once you get that assignment, then your communication process starts with your partners. You don't want to be like me one time at a Division II game, and we did all of the communication prior, and we sent the emails out, and we said, be at such and such a school at such and such a time for this game on this date. And this was around the New Year's, because it was the first week of January. And I show up, one of my partners said, we're in the mountains, way out in the mountains. And we show up, and we're there, hour and a half before it's 4:30. It gets to that uncomfortable time, like 4:32, where you just don't feel like something's right. So I call my partner, our third, and I said, where are you at? What's going on? What's going on? She said, doing good. What are you doing? I'm like, okay, this is really not starting to feel good. And I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm out running around. She said, what are you doing? I said, I'm sitting here at the locker room. There's dead silence. And she went, crap, that's tonight, isn't it? Now, the email said Monday, January 4th. Well, for some reason, she thought it was Tuesday, January 5th was our game. Now, she's an hour and a half, 2 hours away. Make sure you communicate with your partners. Everything. Don't take it for granted that they know that it's North Carolina Tech instead of North Carolina State. Because we know officials, and everybody talks, that so-and-so showed up at Tech when they were supposed to have been at State because they got confused. Or so-and-so showed up at 7 o'clock for a 2 o'clock tip. Now, not 7 in the morning. 7, they're sitting at their house at 1 o'clock, and they've got a 3-hour drive, and it's a 7 o'clock tip, and they're getting ready to leave, and the coordinator calls and says, where you at? Well, I'm just getting ready to leave the house. I got plenty of time. Well, no, you don't, because they tip in an hour. Communication. Make sure you communicate with your partners every detail, whether it's text and confirm, whether it's email confirm, whether it's phone and confirm. As a coordinator, I'm not that picky. Debbie may say something else. Other coordinator, Bobby, may say something else. As long as you communicate and get confirmation, that's the key. When we started, there was no texting, there was no emails, it was all phone calls. But whatever it takes to confirm, whatever it takes to communicate, make sure you do that. Then, when you get to the game, and you have 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes between games, or as you get started today in what we call a typical camp setting, make sure you talk about some things. All three of you, like you said, get to know your names instead of hey you or just about it. What was it? Just about it? About something. I can't remember what just about to. No names, because and I'm not a psychologist, but what's the most pleasing thing to a person's ears is their own name. Get to know names. I'm an advocate of once you develop relationships, I'm an advocate of calling a coach by first name, Because typically, when the coach, he or she's yelling at me, it's by my name. And if I can use their name within reason, then it's going to calm them down a little bit. And any tool I've got that I can use to calm them down a little bit is going to help out. Now, sometimes it's, whoa, coach, and we'll get to that as we talk about coach communication. But have a good pregame. Whether if you're there an hour and a half before, if you're there an hour before, don't sit there and talk about the last game and the last partners or the trip over or the restaurant last night or the restaurant on the way home tonight. Talk about the game. And if the hardest part is if you're a younger official and you're with two people that are supposedly veterans and they're talking about everything but that game at hand, it's hard to interject yourself and say, we need to have a pregame, but these two people have been working for 20 years and I've only been working for 20 minutes. How do I get this involved? Bring up a rules question. Bring up a play. Hey, I heard about this play. Somebody told me about this play. What do you think about this? And they'll talk about it, and then they'll go back on their task of talking about the restaurant or the golf game. Bring up another play. Something to get them started talking. And if you have to just break the ice, say, look, I'm real uncomfortable because I'm just getting started. Let's help me out. Whatever it takes to get you feeling all right. It's communication. Never begin a game without a pregame. I don't care if you've all worked together 3-4 straight nights. If you're on the same crew for 3 straight days, talk about something that has to do with that particular game. Because 3 straight nights, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Wednesday's game I guarantee is going to be different than Monday's. The play is going to be different. The players are going to be different. The attitudes are going to be different. Your attitude is going to be different. So talk about what's going to go on that particular night. When you get to the game, when you're on the floor, the entire way we work, the entire game revolves around effective communication. As soon as you walk out on the floor, you've conveyed your attitude for the night. Because the further up the referee food chain that you get, the further up the ladder you get, the more they have somebody sitting over on that side of the floor or on that first row of the arena watching you to determine, first of all, if they don't already know who you are, they know you when you walk out on the floor. And if your attitude is bored, is put out, is disgusted with being there, then that's conveyed to the coaching staff, to the players. They know, so they talk. Body language is a form of communication we don't even think about. Whether we're standing with our arms crossed, hands on our hip, whatever it may be. Think about your body language. Think about being professional, not the slouch in the chair that's got a great outlook on life. Think about your body language. Hands in pocket, hands on hips, folded arms, all that stuff. Look professional. When you meet coaches, when you meet players, and I thought about this as I was kind of putting notes down. I always joke around that I'm old school, and some people take out the school part and just leave old. But I'm old school. I like to shake hands, and I thought, no, that's the professional way to do it. And on the women's side, we do not fist bump. You don't fist bump anybody. You don't fist bump partners. You don't fist bump players. I went to a first men's game, and I don't pick on officials. First men's game I'd seen in, oh my gosh, 15 years, Division I men's game. Friends asked me to go. I said, okay. We got down, it's big booster at this school. We go down, we're sitting, third row. He goes, what do you think about these seats? And I said, well, they're all right, but usually I'm down there on the floor, so, this isn't really close enough. But we go out there, and the officials are getting the captains together. And as they're coming, and every captain comes up, and it's this, and then it's hugs, and you got 3 captains for each team, 3 officials. So there's 9, hugs all around, fist bumps all around, fist bumping the media table. This is across from the scores table. I'm like, really? Everybody's in love here. And I know we can't, in the women's game, really look odd if we're out there hugging everybody. But I thought, how, I mean, to the innocent bystander, it looks like these three guys have worked and raised these 6 captains. You know, I'm like, God, everybody's in love here. Everybody's fist bumping and hugging. I'm like, that to me, and trust me, these guys are working multiple nights, multiple leagues, and making multiple dollars. So I don't, but I'm thinking that to me that doesn't look professional. I'm about a handshake, and if you're worried about germs, then carry your little bottle of sanitizer and put it at the scorer's bench. Because you know, I've taught people about that too. Just wash your hands, wipe them off. Okay, ball's going to get covered in sweat, and you're still handling it. Okay, get over that. Everything from a run, your run, the way you carry yourself on the floor is a form of communication. Be a good partner. And I'm not going to go, she said communication and partnering. I'm not going to go a lot into partnering. Be a good partner. Don't throw your partners under the bus. Don't sell them out to a coach. And certainly don't sell them out to another official, because the word gets around that Joe was talking about this official, and then this official tells Jen, and Jen tells Ben, and Ben tells Jeff, and Jeff tells Debbie, and Debbie calls it, man, this official, all they do is talk bad. And now it gets around to a supervisor, because little do the officials know, and I love this part because now I'm on both sides. I'm on the floor, but I'm a coordinator as well. And all of these things that I thought didn't happen when I was on the floor all the time, I'm realizing as a coordinator, they happen all the time. Coordinators talk more to each other than officials talk to each other. And you know, as soon as you get in the car and you're on your way home from a game, you're talking about whatever happened. Well, coordinators do the same. I get calls, what do you think about this official? Like, wow, you know, this is how this works. Because we're comparing notes too, because I had an official not show up for a scrimmage, confirmed everything and just decided not to show up. No response, no phone calls, no. So then I have another coordinator in another league say, I put so-and-so on staff. He didn't show up at a game. I said, well, he's done on my staff. She said, well, I'm giving him one more chance. Guess what? He didn't show up at the second game. I said, I tried to tell you. We talk. Don't be the person that we talk bad about. Be the person that we think, man, this person can work. If you get in trouble with one coordinator or one assigner, and you've had nothing but success for me, I'm going to bat for you. I had that happen with one of my officials the very first weekend of my very first season. And I took his word for it, he accidentally double booked. And my game time was at 2 o'clock, and her game time was at 6 o'clock, and 2 different assigning websites, and he just overlooked it and didn't turn hers back. Everything was well and good because they were relatively close until my game time got moved to 4 o'clock. He called me, he said, we're here at 12:30. I said, good, 2 o'clock tip, everybody's good. I said, well, good, I appreciate you. I'm out of town at a meeting. He said, well, we got a little problem. I said, what's your little problem? He said, well, our tip's not until 4 o'clock. I said, well, you're there a couple hours early. Well, no, I got a game at 6 o'clock at such and such. I went, that's not my problem. Don't make it my problem. Well, later that night, he took care of it, worked my game. That other supervisor called. What in the heck is going on? You recommended him for my staff, and now he did this. I went to bat for him. He worked our tournament that year. Because he keeps his nose clean and he doesn't do the bad things that gets us in trouble, which is bad communication. Don't argue. Don't argue with the evaluators. Don't argue with the signers. Don't argue with anybody. And we'll talk about the coaching part later, but when somebody has criticism, and Bobby talked about the criticism and the condemnation and things like that on one of the slides, take it. Some of that is going to be good, and some of it you're thinking, you know, I know Ben and Jeff have sat there when I've come and done a post game with them. They're thinking, okay, guy's off his rocker, but at least they listen long enough to say, you know what, part of this is true, and I'm going to take it and learn from it. But don't argue. Don't cross your arms when they're trying to tell you something, and give the negative feedback. Be receptive to what they got. That's communication. Don't coach players. Don't tell them get out of the lane. Don't tell them get your hands off. Communication is with the whistle. I'm not an advocate of stepping into the lane and telling them to get out of the lane, because as soon as you do, you have a coach saying, well, if they're in the lane for 3 seconds, then call it. Okay, then I'm going to call it. You know, if two players get tangled up and I think I can avoid conflict, I may step in and tell them easy or break it up, but that's not coaching. That's trying to save me some problems of how to enforce a penalty that's getting ready to happen that I really don't know where in the rule book that is. And I don't want to find some obscure part in the rule book that, as Debbie said in one of her speeches in these past several years, I don't want to find a part in the rule book that I really don't know where it's at. And there's parts in there that I swear that John Adams and Debbie Williams, as much as they know about the book, they don't know where this part is. There's cobwebs back there, and if I can avoid that part of the rule book, I'm going to do it. Don't coach players. Help them out of situations that's going to lead to worse things. I'm checking my time. I think I'm good. Communication with coaches. I said I can tell you everything not to say to a coach. But I think the key is, and what I've learned, and the analogy earlier was awesome. They are like children. And I learned this I've been working for almost 20 years, and it took a Division II regional with a coach that was worse than a 2-year-old for me to finally understand. I have a stepdaughter she's not the prodigal child yet because she hadn't come back, but we had to boot her out of the house. But it was one of those situations where it was just complete opposite, just headbutting. And we all have those relationships in our life where everything you say butts heads with everything the other person says. So I'm going up and down the court, and this coach from Pennsylvania he is a child. He is, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China type coach? I mean, that's the question he asked me. What has that got to do with anything? So it took me to realize every time he said something to me, I had to respond to it. And the 5-hour drive home after that tournament made me realize that comments don't facilitate a response. And I realized that for 12 years of trying to raise a teenage stepdaughter, the epiphany hit me. Every time she said something, I would have to say something back. Well, what does that turn into? That turns into an argument. Because she's saying something that I didn't agree with, so I'd say something that she didn't agree with. Well, that's what this coach did. Brad, that's a walk. What can I say back? No, coach, that's not a walk. Well, now what is it? It's an argument. Well, what constructive did that get me? Nowhere. And it took this 2-year-old coach to get me to understand one of the greatest life lessons is comments don't facilitate a response. Now, if they have a legitimate question, we better answer it. Because out of professional respect to them, we better answer a legitimate question. We better answer a legitimate question. Because they are paid, whether it's high school, whether it's JV, whether it's rec, they're getting paid money by somebody to fight for their team. And we'll talk about irrational and emotional differences in a minute. But they're getting paid to fight for their team. I got to have respect for that. If they ask me a question, I better answer it. Because I know if I go over there and ask them a question, I'd expect them to answer mine. Now, it's not the off-the-wall questions. I don't even acknowledge those. Comments I hear, but I don't have to respond to comments. Remember that when you go out on the floor, and remember that in life, because you will meet people as you go through life that bait you into arguments and discussions. You've already got them, and they throw the bait out there. They never ask questions when they throw that bait. It's always a comment. It's always their opinion. And when you come back with your opinion that's dissimilar, now you've created an argument and you've created tension. And it's like that with anything in life, but especially when you're dealing with 2-year-old coaches. Okay, so remember that. If there's nothing else you get, comments don't facilitate responses. One of our very dear friends had an interview other than Jen, had an interview in Referee Magazine, and it goes through the interview, and the very, very last question and comments that our dear friend made in Referee Magazine was that the problem with young officials is they think they have to have an answer for everything. We don't answer comments. We don't answer statements. And I thought that was awesome that she put that, that was in Referee Magazine in her interview, and that's what we try to tell young officials. And as learning, we're teaching ourselves. Like I said, I worked 20 years before I realized, gosh, this is much easier than what I thought. And I got home and I told my wife, I said, I think I got an idea on how we can handle our daughter, your daughter. She, what's that? And I said, don't respond to comments. And it absolutely drove our daughter insane, because she would say some things and she's like, I'm waiting. I didn't say nothing. And after about a couple weeks, she's just, and you think about it with a coach, if you don't say anything, acknowledge maybe, but you don't have a response, it drives them insane. They'll go on to something else. Because guess what? We've come up and down the floor a couple times, and now they got to go on to something else. We talk a little bit about emotional and irrational. And we talk about this in pre-games as well. Coaches are paid to be emotional. They're supposed to fight for their teams. I have little respect for a coach that really doesn't fight for their team. And you think about it, that's what they're supposed to do. If you've played sports, you wanted a coach who was going to fight for you. It's when they cross that line to irrational, it's when you've got to realize, okay, where is this irrationality coming from? And I was with some young officials at a D2 school, and I'd figured this one coach out. He'd been there a long time. And I said, watch this coach. About the first media timeout, maybe the second media timeout, 10 or 12 minute mark, he will start yelling at us. And why do you say that? It's because the first 6-8 minutes of the game, he's going to yell at his players, he's going to yell at his players, he's going to yell at his players. And they are not going to respond to what he's yelling about. They're going to have 4 or 5 turnovers. They're going to miss 4 or 5 shots. They're going to give away 4 or 5 layups. They're not responding to what he's yelling about. So who's he going to yell at? Is mom sitting behind him? Or is he going to yell at us? And sure enough, 4 or 5 layups in a row, 4 or 5 transitions, 4 or 5 missed assignments on defense, timeout, and he is screaming at us, and we're standing out there, and I said, I told you. He's got to respond to us. We understood where his irrationality was coming from, and it helped us deal with him better. Understand where that coach is coming from, where their approach is, will help you deal with him better. Acknowledge them. Even if it's a simple, yes, I heard you. Yes, we'll take a look at that. Just an acknowledgement. Ignoring them to some point, I said, we don't respond to comments, but if you continually ignore comments, then you're going to get yourself in trouble. Acknowledge. Be comfortable. The hardest thing as we all started officiating was learn how to develop a relationship with coaches and how to interact, because they are so intense, and they've been doing it for a long time and we haven't. Now do we have to know that we're on the right place on the floor, that our partner's on the right place on the floor, the status of the ball, these 2 players doing this, these 2 players doing that, the clock, the table. Now we got to learn how to answer a coach's question when they ask it, or how to interact with the coach. It's hard to put it all in together. Get a comfortability level to communicate with them and acknowledge them, to say, you know what, nobody has a problem if you say, you know what, let me think about that, I'll get back to you. Chances are by the time you get back to them, they've forgotten. But buy yourself some time, and it's all communication. Don't do what I did in the game and give this, we do this as a stop sign. I've had enough. Now you've drawn the line in the sand. I did this one time and turned around and did it again, and the film shows me doing stop signs like, I look like the traffic cop. And about the second stop sign, one of my partners came over my shoulder and whacked the coach. I'm like, I was still kind of talking to him. 2 hands down is a lot less aggressive Well, Coach, I heard you. Don't come at me. This is don't come at me. You're done. And I don't care where across the floor you want to do that if you've drawn the line. And then you have, your three things is acknowledgement, one-hand, two-hand warning, or a technical foul. And they give us that tool. We talked about the irrational behavior. Comments about don't facilitate response. Don't ignore questions. There was an online thing Referee Magazine just put out, 8 ways to ruin your reputation, and some of it had to do with communication, talking about other officials, talking about. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and we're at a dance competition, and I'm sitting there, and she's getting ready to dance, and I look, and my coordinator's calling me. Not my coordinator, my commissioner's calling me. I mean, it's a Saturday afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. We have 2 o'clock tips. 3 o'clock. We're not even done with games, and my commissioner's calling. I'm like, okay, this isn't good. So I step out and I take a phone. We got an issue. I said, okay, what's the issue? He said, well, we need to check on this crew at such and such a school because I've already gotten a phone call from the AD. I'm like, we're not even halftime. Well, we're just past halftime. Well, we need to check on something. We understand that one of our staff called the coach an idiot. And I said, okay. So I knew I had an observer there, but the observer was not floor side. So talked to him, no issues. Anything after the game, no issues. So I called the official, and I said, everything go all right? Yeah, everything went good. Any issues? No, no real issues. Of course, that's what all we're going to say that. No issues. I said, no issues. Now we did have a backcourt violation, 10-second backcourt. I said, well, tell me about the backcourt. Well, I'm at center. I called a 10-second backcourt count right before the media timeout. I said, and? Well, the coach came out on the floor and said, Brad said you can't call that foul. Well, call that violation. Well, Brad didn't say that. He took what I said at the beginning of the season out of context. But Brad said you can't call that. Brad said you can't call that. So he turns and he goes to his bench. This is across the floor. My official is at the division line across the benches. And the crowd gets riled up. And they're screaming, yeah, what he said, what so-and-so coach said. Yeah, he's right, what he said. Well, the official turns like this and just audibly, and this is not a quiet gym like this. This is a loud gym. And he says, yeah, but so-and-so's an idiot. And the person that happened to be sitting right here was the president of the university. And I'm like, ugh. You know, first of all, you don't like getting calls from your commissioner on 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Second of all, you don't like to get it because an official said something that shouldn't have been said. Now, have we all thought, that coach is an idiot? That fan is an idiot? Yeah. Have we turned and said it and the president of the university heard us? No. Heaven help us if it does. So, you know, obviously there's some severe repercussions on what you say and what you don't say. Silence cannot be misquoted. And in the day of, I envy you because you all get this opportunity to officiate and get all of this education and teaching to become officials to take our place in so many years. I was intramural director, student director of the college that I went to for 2 years. Assigned officials, I always put myself on the fraternity A games and just threw myself into the fire. And it was awesome. Never had anything like this, ever. So you all have a golden opportunity. The thing I don't envy about you is everywhere you go, everything you do can be put on videotape. Everything. It doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter where you're at. It can be put on videotape. And remember that I didn't have to worry about that. We didn't even have cell phones. I learned computers. I got about 2 minutes. Good. We didn't have computers. So everything you do. Can I have one more story? One more story. It's encouragement. And I can say this because this is not something that I did bad. I'm at Appalachian State, and the coach there is just as fiery as they get. And I'd had her a few times a year. We're coming up and down the floor. We finished last minute of the game. One of her players would call a foul. One of her players getting ready to shoot foul shots. And she yells at her player, gives her instruction on shooting a better foul shot, whether it's flex her knees, whether it's the follow through, whatever it is, but she's yelling encouragement. We're under a minute. And I'm standing there next to her, and she screams encouragement to her. She turns to her bench, teachable moment, and she said, always leave them with encouragement. Always leave them with something positive. She said, that's the way we'll get better. And I stood there, and she shot the first foul shot. They gave the ball, getting ready to give the ball back to her, and I said, Darcy, come here. She came about 6, 8 feet back up the bench. I said, come here. And she said, what? And I said, where's mine? And she said, what do you mean, Brad? I said, where's my encouragement? I said, you've been chewing my butt for 39 minutes. Where's my encouragement? She said, you're right. She said, good job, Brad. I'm proud of you. I said, that's what I want to hear. Did anybody have any questions on my rambling? Any questions about communication? Anything? Am I good? Am I done? Oh.
What's an important thing you think should be in the pregame that you think is sometimes overlooked?
Wow. Who said everything? Gosh, it's overlooked in a pregame. I mean, we start out in November. We talk about new rules and points of emphasis, and as we get to January, we say, well, there's no new rules. So we talk about game tendencies and player tendencies, and we talk about plays that we've had throughout the first 2 months of the season. So you morph your pre-games depending on the part of the season you're in. As far as something that's overlooked, I think that might be tendencies, team tendencies and player tendencies. I refereed in football. We'd come in and we'd talk about, okay, this defensive back we know will run their mouth. And if any of you work football, it's the defensive backs and the wide receivers. Those are the punks. Okay, the linemen are the dummies. The defensive backs and the wide receivers are the punks. That's the ones that are going. They run their mouths the whole game. And as a side judge, that's who I'd take care of. And so we come in and we talk about, okay, 24 for this team likes to run their mouth. Well, the observer you can't go in predisposed as to what they're going to do. Well, if you don't, then you're caught off guard. We're not looking for something to happen. We're aware of it. And I think player tendencies and team tendencies, whether they shoot a lot of threes, whether they go to the post, things like that. But what can get us in trouble that we're not ready for? Because we get so caught up in, okay, these are our new rules. This is this, and this is our position, and this is what we're going to do if we have a double whistle. But what's going to catch us off guard? Well, this player likes to make a spin move, and when she finishes, she also likes to get in somebody's face because she's that type. I think it's those small tendencies that can catch us off guard. Anybody else? Nothing? Good.